Hi everyone, and welcome back to Woman2Woman. Well, as you know, we've been journeying through the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verses 4, 5, 6 and 7, and today we'll look at verse 8. We've been studying Max Lucado's study, Be Anxious for Nothing. We've been looking at how can we overcome anxiety? How can we safely navigate through life without experiencing crippling anxiety? Is there a way out? Well, in this study, we've been looking at the tools given to us by God to help us in doing just that. Paul has encouraged us in his letter to the church in Philippi that we don't need to be anxious. He's taught us to pray about everything, to give over our concerns to God in prayer. We've looked at, instead of looking at our concerns and our worries and our stresses, to rejoice in the Lord, letting our gentleness be evident to all. We discovered last week that when we do that, when we respond to God that way, He in turn blesses us with His very own peace, the peace that comes from the throne room of heaven, that comes from God. And today we looked at an old friend in Scripture from the book of Luke in chapter 10. The story of Martha and Mary, two sisters that Jesus came to visit. Only one of the sisters was very troubled by anxious thoughts. Martha, in verse 40, it tells us, was very distracted. She had so much going on in her head. She was stressed out, trying to do all of the chores, make everything perfect. And quite often when we struggle with anxiety, when we struggle with those stresses, it can lead to other raw emotions spilling out. And that's what we see in this passage of Scripture. For comparison sets in, and it happens to us too. We're stressed, we're anxious, then we start to look around at our friends and our family, maybe even our spouses, and we say, they're not stressed, they're not anxious, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and there they are receiving God's blessing. And Martha was struggling with comparison as she looked round at her sister Mary, and there she was, sitting at the feet of Jesus. She wasn't troubled with all the chores. She wasn't distracted with her to-do list. There she was, just sitting at the Master's feet. Now that didn't mean that Mary didn't have a to-do list the same as Martha. It didn't mean that she wasn't concerned with things in life. But for Mary, she chose to sit at Jesus' feet. She chose to lay aside the busyness, the distractions, the anxiety, the stress, and she chose to sit and listen to Jesus. Whereas Martha was consumed with anxiety and panic and stress and fear and worry, and it caused her to be a little bit bitter towards her sister. And it can happen to us too. We can find ourselves in a situation that we become bitter because of our anxiety. But in the book of Philippians, in this letter to the church in Philippi, Paul has given us tools to help us not become fixated on the anxiety, but to be fixed on Him. And He's blessed us with this encouragement that there's things that we can do, rejoicing in the Lord, praying to God, sitting at the Master's feet, making that choice to choose Him, to choose Jesus over our anxiety. And we've concluded our series today by looking at verse 8. He gives us a final encouragement. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, one thing, fix your thoughts. See, we have a choice. We can fix our thoughts on the distractions, on the anxiety, on the stress, on the worry, or we can fix our thoughts on Jesus, as Mary did. And he says, fix your thoughts, and he tells us to think about such things. He gives us the things that we could be thinking about instead of the anxiety. He tells us to think about what's true and what's honourable and what is right and what is pure and what is lovely and admirable. Think about these things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice. We need to keep doing this stuff. We need to keep turning to this Word of God and using it to help fill us up and battle against those things that come to try and rob and steal our peace. Then he finishes off. Then the peace of God will be with you. He reiterates that peace of God, the very peace of the throne room of heaven, will be given to you. So instead of being anxious, turn to Jesus. Choose to fix your thoughts and your time on him and allow him to fill you with his peace. I hope this study has encouraged you and inspired you to live a life of peace, filled with the love of Christ, rather than living a life filled with anxiety. So tune in next time as we start something fresh and new. Until next time, God bless.